The Battle of Hill 937, more commonly known as the Battle of Hamburger Hill, was a major military engagement during the Vietnam War, which took place between May 10 and May 20, 1969. It occurred in the remote A Shau Valley near the border with Laos, an area heavily controlled by North Vietnamese forces and known for its strategic importance. The A Shau Valley was a key supply route for the North Vietnamese Army, NVA, and part of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which allowed the NVA to funnel men, weapons, and supplies from North Vietnam into the south. Hill 937, a steep and heavily forested area, became a focal point for the U.S. military's efforts to disrupt these logistics and deny the NVA control over the region. The hill was identified as a significant military target by U.S. forces during Operation Apache Snow, a larger campaign aimed at clearing the A Shau Valley of NVA forces. Hill 937 itself was given its designation based on its height in meters above sea level. The fight for Hill 937 involved the 101st Airborne Division of the U.S. Army, supported by artillery and airstrikes, attempting to dislodge entrenched NVA forces. The hill's steep, jungle-covered terrain made the ascent difficult and exposed U.S. troops to constant ambushes, sniper fire, and booby traps laid by the well-prepared NVA troops. The battle was characterized by a series of brutal and sustained assaults. Over the course of 10 days, American forces launched numerous frontal assaults on NVA positions on the hill, despite heavy casualties. The fighting was intense and involved close-quarters combat, with the Americans frequently battling up the hill through muddy, rain-soaked jungle conditions. The NVA forces, estimated to be a battalion-size element, defended the hill with a complex system of trenches, bunkers, and foxholes. Despite massive U.S. firepower, including aerial bombardment and artillery support, the NVA held their positions for several days, causing significant U.S. losses. By the time the U.S. forces finally captured the hill on May 20, 1969, the battle had become a symbolic and controversial event. The Americans suffered 72 dead and more than 370 wounded, while NVA casualties were estimated at more than 600 killed. The high American casualty rate, particularly for what seemed to be a strategically insignificant hill, sparked widespread media criticism back in the United States. The term Hamburger Hill was coined by American soldiers, referring to the way their forces were ground up like meat in the intense and seemingly fruitless combat. Once the hill was captured, U.S. forces abandoned it only a few weeks later, raising further questions about the necessity of the battle. The Battle of Hamburger Hill became one of the most controversial engagements of the Vietnam War. Public reaction, fueled by graphic media coverage and the high number of casualties, contributed to the growing anti-war sentiment in the U.S. Many questioned the tactics used by military commanders, particularly the reliance on frontal assaults in heavily defended terrain. The battle also had political consequences. In response to the criticism, the U.S. military adopted a more cautious approach to major battles, with a shift in focus toward reducing American casualties rather than pursuing high-cost territorial objectives. This shift in strategy eventually led to a greater emphasis on Vietnamization, the policy of turning the war effort over to South Vietnamese forces. The Battle of Hamburger Hill remains a powerful symbol of the futility and brutality of the Vietnam War, often cited as an example of the war's human cost and the challenges of fighting a determined and well-entrenched enemy on their own terrain.